Hello and welcome to another episode of the Into the Deep podcast. If you have been serious about building your faith, the Catholic faith, and learning more about Christianity over the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, then I'm sure that you've had some kind of interaction in some way with our next speaker and his platform, Parousia Media, who have been responsible for not only bringing some of the greatest Christian and Catholic speakers to Australia, but have also been really one of the driving forces in the multimedia platforms online, in podcast form, social media, etc. I'm referring to the founder and the director of Parousia Media, Mr. Charbel Raish. Charbel, welcome.
Thank you, Jade.
It's a great honour. And, you know, I was mentioning to you off air that I think that you're the perfect person to be here with us discussing the topic about it takes a village to raise a family, because you have such an eclectic array of experiences that I think you'll be able to draw on, apart from being involved in Parousia Media and the speakers that you would have heard from over the last 10 to 15 years. You're also a teacher and the father of 9 children.
That's right.
Which range in age from 17, soon to be 18, to 1.5. So
that's right.
You've got the full spectrum of experience and knowledge, I'm sure, that you'll be able to impart. So we thank you once again for being with us. I want to begin, as I mentioned, the topic is, it takes a village to raise a family. How important is the community, not just the wider community, but also the church community that you've found in the raising of your family?
Man, it's massive. They say one of the largest or most strongest influences in a child's life are their peers. And that was a big deal, say, me growing up as well, right? So people who know my story, I didn't have practicing Catholic friends. I didn't have any of those. And I was surrounded by my Muslim friends. So they really pulled me away from my faith. And now if I think about my children, my wife and I, Christine, who I met at St. Charbel's, by the way, at a faith formation night with fellow practicing Catholics, that really drew us, our faith. We grew up together. We were early 20s when we met and got engaged, married. And then we were discussing, what type of family do we want? And it was important that as husband and wife, we knew what direction we were heading. So we toyed with the idea of homeschooling. But there was no one that we knew that was homeschooling. There was one family out of Sydney. But then we found another family that was encouraging, and we said, okay, look, maybe if God lines up the ducks in order, we'll homeschool. And bit by bit, we were so detailed. He found us a place with space, a place that had an old schoolhouse on it.
Wow.
We had all these things lined up, and we said, okay, meant to be. Not only that, talking about community and village, I ended up buying a place with a fellow colleague of mine, a teacher. It's one house, a big farmhouse, with 2 parts to it. So there's a hallway down the middle, and we literally shared the one roof, 4 bedrooms each. I only had 4 kids at the time, and we had between us, 10 children. He had 6 kids, I had 4, and we lived together on acreage. And so we started to homeschool. And the kids had each other to play with. And we realized very quickly the importance of having like-minded children, similar age to your own. And it makes it so much easier because praying the rosary is normal. When we say the Angelus in the middle of the day, it's normal. That's what we do. We say grace before meals. It's normal. All those things that we practice in our faith, we do it together. And so it was 2 families. And I'm going back now, 12 years, and
Wow.
that's developed over the years, and we have probably an unusual setup, so to speak, compared to most. We used to live in suburbia. Now we live in semi-rural suburb, place called Arcadia, and we're on 8 acres ourselves. Our neighbours have 5, and we're now in a situation where we've got 6 families who are neighbours. Between us, with my 9 children and the other family's children, something like 35 children.
Wow.
We all homeschool, and we've got each other to lean on. So when you're talking about a village, we literally have
Wow.
a mini village, and the kids, they play, they run between the different properties. We have a back gate, and we run between each other. And we discovered this, to be honest, in a real way during COVID when it was lockdown. We were 3 families at the time, and then we said, we need each other. This is important. We saw the value. The parents needed it, as well as the children. And so yeah, look, this is very personal to me, and it's a big deal, and it makes a huge difference in our children's faith, because then we are not the only ones saying the messages we are. We have reinforcement from other families. So I can't agree with you more. A village is super important, whatever that looks like for you, and it is harder these days, more than ever. But love to unpack this whole concept.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that. What I find has been, it's been really sad actually to see the anxiety that parents have been going through over the last probably, I'd say, 10 years. When a lot of my friends that have had children, as they've had children, or they're preparing to, or newborns, or they're starting to get a little bit older, one of their biggest concerns is, where am I going to send my kids to school? And I think 10, 15 years ago, it probably wouldn't have been a thought to homeschool children. It wasn't really...
That's right.
Wasn't common. Honestly, I never ever heard of anyone that was homeschooling their kids. It actually sounded a little bit weird back in the day. You think of the Amish communities that just, kind of separated their kids. But no disrespect to anyone who's doing it. It's more just the mindset of what it was like back then, because it was not a need really to do it. But as things have evolved in society, in schooling, a lot more people are doing it, and a lot more people are starting to find the benefit in it, in the sense that they have a lot more control over what their children are being taught. There's no kind of influence from outside agendas. And so a lot of people have started to see the homeschooling, at least to consider it. It's actually a consideration for a lot of faithful families. It's not straight away we're going to send them to school. They're weighing up options. Should I homeschool? Should I send them to this school? Do I send them to a Maronite school so that they're around all other Maronites, or do I want them to be around non-Maronite Catholics, for example? My question to you is, Charbel, how do you balance, because obviously you've set up some amazing routines with prayer and faith, but I'm sure in the development of your children, you want them to be able to then go out into the world, as Christ called his disciples, to go out to the world and make disciples of all nations. They're going to be faced with challenges and situations that they may not be familiar with. How do you balance the homeschooling with the faith and the firm, solid teaching about the faith, about family values, but then preparing them to then be ready to go out into the world and to know what's ahead without losing their soul?
Yeah, it's a big question, because it's different for every family. And I think in this very issue, we're faced with a lot of other challenges. It's not just what you hear from school, from the teachers, or from the students. We now have these devices, the mobile phone, the internet. Gaming isn't just gaming anymore. Gaming is now interacting. So you've got the internet where the kids are talking to each other. Influences are coming in from top and bottom, from the front door and the back door. You've got to be ready for all of it. And so in a sense, we've homeschooled on one reason, is to, yes, protect them, but we don't want them to be, sort of locked up away from the world forever. The idea is, the big question here for every parent is, at what age is it appropriate for the child to be introduced to certain things? So when is it, and that's a great discussion, when is it appropriate for a child to have access to a phone that actually is just used as a phone? When is that the right time? When a child needs to talk to their parents, pick me up from school, drop me off, okay, and then be very careful, because what do we do as parents? We might get a new phone and give them our old phone, and the old phone has the internet, it's got all the apps on there, and you're handing your child access to the whole world, all this information. And if we don't teach them how to use it, we are probably responsible for the damage for their development, because they're not going to know how to navigate through all of that noise.
Do you know what I find the challenge is? Sorry to cut you
Yeah,
off.
please.
As an adult, I'm still struggling with how to come to grips with the amount of information and
Yeah,
power that the phone has.
absolutely.
Like adults, we as adults,
Yeah.
are so, it's such a hard thing, such a big challenge.
Do you remember a time when there were no mobile phones? Do you remember
I
those
do, I
days?
do.
I remember when
And
it
I
was a
thank
big
God,
deal.
Charbel,
Yeah,
I thank God that when I was at school, we didn't have them,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I knew the challenges that we faced at the time, and I knew that if we had smartphones, social media, those kind of apps at school,
Mm-hmm.
it would have created even more
Yeah.
even more challenges. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, keep
we
going.
we got up to no good when I was in high school,
Mm,
and to my shame, we were vandalizing, and there was violence, and there was all that sort of stuff. And just imagine, and that was without the phones, right?
mm,
Imagine what more we would have gotten up to if, I guess, we were communicating better and were able to set things up. I just thank God it could have been worse what we had. But now we think, just to pacify the kids, we might give them the phone, they play. But from such a young age, if that's all they need, the lights, it's all of the sounds, the music, all that entertainment, they get bored very quickly, and that's a real danger, because when you're bored, you start to do things you regret. And I've seen the challenges now as we've navigated, my wife and I. When do we give the phone to our child? Now that's a big topic. That's its own. I feel like that's a whole show itself.
mm,
But it's other things, like even friends, like going to birthday parties, and then at the birthday party, okay, what sort of things are going to be done? And again, it's all about the age. So there's an 8-year-old birthday party, a 12-year-old birthday party, a 16-year-old birthday party, an 18. So it's different for everyone. But down to the music being played, is it appropriate for an 8-year-old or 9-year-old to be listening to some of the music with the lyrics that are very inappropriate? And as an 8 or 9-year-old who hasn't experienced much life, they're singing along to lyrics about people who have gone to hell and back, people who are suicidal, people who are on drugs, people who are looking at picking up, girls in a bar, and you start to win. They're chanting this stuff at such a young age in primary, and that's okay. And parents have got to be really alert. You might think, okay, I've taken my child to church. We say our prayers, but under your very nose, their friends are playing the wrong, music that can really penetrate the soul. Music it does sort of bypass the conscience. It goes to your subconscious, and right away, if you're not careful what you're listening to, that's another influence. Imagine, at such a young age, the jingles, right? They work. I remember as a kid, all these different jingles. I still sing today. I'm in my 40s now, and I'm singing jingles when I was a little kid. That's how much of an impact they have.
yeah.
Well,
For sure.
imagine if we are not careful, the stuff our kids are singing repeatedly, over and over. Are they glorifying God, or are they actually from the enemy? And you want to be very, very careful. Very inappropriate to some of the birthday parties that play music. So even down to that, sleepovers, be very careful. I mean, what do they get up to at night? What do some parents allow and others don't? And what you're trying to protect, and then the other ones, it just gets undone. So I think we have to gauge as a community. This is where the village comes in too. What's appropriate for the 8-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 12-year-old, then the young teenager, then the older teenager. Because I think our standards, as we have access to information at a younger age, that the dangers are increasing, and we want to be more alert. It's actually, it is hard work as a parent, because you've got to be alert all the time, and it comes with having a relationship with your children. You've got to really talk to them, ask them questions, get into their life, show interest in their life, and let them open up. The worst thing we can do, and this is what happens often with many parents, the quick, sharp, we just shut them down. So don't do that again. Move on. Just do what I say, just because. Don't give them a reason why. And then the kids are like, okay, I'm just going to do this behind mum and dad's back. And we create this sort of double life. Our children start to hide from us. And that's the worst thing we can do as parents, is push them away and let them be one image to the world, because we don't want to be embarrassed as parents. I don't want my kids to be doing the wrong thing. And what does that look like on me? This is where pride comes in. We want to make sure that the child is making the decision on their own accord. When does it transfer the faith from the parent's faith to the child's faith? When do we need to instill in them the values of our faith such a young age that it becomes their own, and then it becomes unshakable. So when they do go out in the world, they realize that's wrong, that's right. We've got to teach them how to distinguish right from wrong, and that's the key.
I find it such a hard balance, Charbel. Like,
it is.
I know some parents that are wonderful, wonderful parents that have created amazing environments, and their kids, some of them, end up having challenges and things like that. The temptations of the world can be very, very alluring, and it is very challenging for, very, very challenging raising children in this time. I think it's always, every generation has its challenges, and sometimes we probably think, it's the worst now than it's ever been, but, there's probably been other greater challenges than what we face, but because we're in it, we probably think it's greater. But you touched on it with the friends thing. I'm a massive believer in it, and I think it's biblical as well. When the paralytic man couldn't get through the crowd, the four in the crowd lift him up, put him in the roof. There's actually a meme about it. It's like, don't tell me your friends don't matter. When the paralytic man was literally saved in his faith because of his four friends that lifted him up. And I think that's a beautiful analogy about if there is somebody weak in the group, that if you have really good friends, they literally lift you up to heaven, in that way that they take you away from, whatever's making you paralyzed, whether it be sin or whatever it is. And I'm a massive believer in my own life, but how do you manage the friendship side of things? Because that's, I feel like, the most important thing. And that's why I was asking you about the whole homeschooling thing, because, it's, and also the difference is your children might meet, for example, other families or other children that weren't homeschooled.
Yes.
And they're going to have potentially different values, different upbringings. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's probably the first, every time I mention we homeschool, the very first question people have is, what do you do about social? How do they socialize? Well, if I was to compare what the social life my kids have versus what I had, these kids are almost overdosed on the social side. They are more social than I ever was. If you think about it, these children are not just in a group of kids their own age. They're mixing with all ages, right? So they're taught responsibility from such a young age. They've got to learn how to speak to adults. They've got to learn responsibility. They're looking after the baby, the young toddlers, and they're very responsible very early on. They also are interacting, just going to church on Sunday, you're interacting with a lot of other families, with a lot of other kids who are not homeschooled. Sport, they all play sport, and they're mixing it with their soccer team. We've got touch football, soccer. I think we did indoor soccer. We've done, my daughter's doing netball. There's probably 4 sports that we've collectively been playing consistently. And so there's a lot of influence there. There's also cousins. So we can't forget that. That is a very common one where we're going to family, relatives, and they're seeing their cousins. And with many Lebanese families, they're big families, and you got lots of cousins. And so you're mixing all the time. The key is, so how do they stand on their feet when they know right from wrong? And God bless them, the different ages in their innocence. My little 6-year-old can point out, well, that person said the wrong thing. They said a bad word, so they correct. And they're bold. They'll tell their friend. But then as they get older, they realize, okay, what are the social norms? How do we do it in a way where we're not judging? Or how do we do it in a way where the other person is going to appreciate the feedback? So my 12 and 13-year-old kids, they're a bit more sensitive there. They'll quietly come up to me and Mum, they were swearing, or they were saying the wrong thing, or that person doesn't have any clothes on. So, there's all this sort of stuff that they're like, they're seeing. And
tell us more about your family functions, Charbel. What's going on?
Well, they have clothes, but these days,
it's
not much is left to the imagination. And that's another issue. Like, there's a whole topic there, modesty. But from the music, from all the materialism, think about the culture today. It's very much a consumer culture. We spend time for entertainment. We're fast food culture as well. We don't spend much time thinking of others. It's mainly in and out. I'm getting information very quickly. I can be entertained very quickly. I have junk food all the time. I can have access to anything I want whenever I want, and nothing's going to hold me back. And what does that do? It makes us spoiled. And so then we get bored very quickly. We get, sick of things very quickly. We start to get annoyed very quickly. We even have little things affect us easily. What I love this saying, have you ever heard of the first world problems? Well, how many first world problems do our kids complain about? So I really want to show my kids to appreciate life. So, I make sure, I've got 5 kids in a room. I've got the space. I could easily have, more space for them, but I want them to learn to share. I want them, we hand down the clothes. We make sure that they're sharing their stuff. Toys are minimal, not every latest gadget, but enough. It's really weird, but as a young child, they're more happy with just a very simple, like, block, block of wood.
I find
a
that
box.
when they're unwrapping a present, they love the box more than they do the actual toy.
It's so funny. So what are we doing? Because the moment you start introducing, think about sugar in food. The moment a baby tries sugar, they're not going to want to eat the vegetables anymore. So it's the moment you give them all these loud, noisy, bright screens, well, the bland, Lego block is not going to cut it anymore, and they're just going to be in. So what happens is we've just got to be smart on what do we introduce to our children at what age. If you give them everything at once at an early age, you really are spoiling them, and you're actually setting them up to be pretty weak. It's not good. It's not good for their self-control. It's not good for they're taking on habits that really is making it hard for them to say no to things. And then that's going to have a ripple effect in the way they recreate, the way they play, the way they even pray, like even getting bored of prayer very quickly, not knowing how to be silent, not knowing how do they last in a mass that goes for 1 hour. If they're just always wanting to be stimulated, it's a recipe for disaster. We've got to learn, we've got to help them learn and discover silence, sharing, appreciate the simple things in life, nature, a beautiful sunset, the full moon, looking at the stars at night. That basic thing of, look outside, look at the stars. For centuries, our ancestors did that, and they knew they weren't alone. They knew that there was a creator behind this. When you look at a beautiful landscape, you say how awesome, the hillside is, but there's a creator behind that. How awesome is the ocean, and there's a creator behind that. And so we've just got to not just throw them in front of screens and stimulate things and junk food and you name it, all these different things. It's almost like, if I could say this, what's the first commandment? God says, have no other false gods before one. And that's really true. These toys, these gadgets, money, job, fame, all these things, brands, they can become false gods in a funny way, and they get in the way of the one true God. And I think we just got to go back to basics, a simplified life, and when we do that, we can appreciate the little things in life. And that's why it's important for parents to make sure you just sort of drip feed the children slowly, introduce them to things slowly, and really protect them, guard them. And as they grow up, at the age appropriate time, introduce them to the next thing. And that's the great debate. And that, we can go specifics if we want, but we're still learning. I think a phone, the great debate is, does an 8-year-old have a phone? Do they need a phone? I mean, if they don't need a phone, I would not recommend pretty much anyone in primary school having a phone. Early high school, do they need an iPad? I mean, schools now are even giving, and I've been teaching for a while and I've seen the transition, laptops. So what happens? Can I just share what a typical scenario is? And then anyone watching and listening can make their own mind if they think this is healthy. You wake up in the morning, the alarm, what's the alarm? It's the phone. You pick up the phone to turn the alarm off. You look at the phone, there's notifications. You start to look at the notifications. We haven't even said good morning to God. We're just looking at this phone. There might be a message. There might be some sort of update on social media, and bam, we're looking at that. Then we might wash our face, listening to something while we're brushing our teeth. Then we might go have breakfast and we're watching something. Maybe even if it's just the news, whatever it is, you've got a screen right there. Then you get ready, you go to work or school. What's happening these days? We've got the earpods. So school kids have the headphones on. People traveling to work have the headphones on. And what are they doing? Looking down at the screen. Just think about what's going on. They haven't had any moment of silence yet. It's just been noise. And they haven't even started work yet or school. And they've had probably 1 to 2 hours worth of information before even saying good morning to God. Then they go to work. And what is work? What is school? If you're at work, if you're in the corporate world, you're probably in front of a computer, typing, emailing, you're doing all that. Zoom calls now, you name it. If you're in school, what are they doing these days? And schools are proud of the fact that they are getting to the point where one-to-one students can have a laptop or an iPad, and they're celebrating the fact that they have access to all these things. I don't know if that's a good thing. I mean, if you're all day in front of an iPad and a laptop, and then, the schools are doing a good thing. Some schools confiscate the phone off the kids. So no phone during school. Well done. But between 9 and 3, they're on the iPad and the laptop. And then they'll give them back the phone at 3 o'clock. They go home. What do you think they're doing? Catching up on everything else that they've missed. So just look at that day. I haven't even gone back. They've got homework to do on the laptop. Then they have their own recreation, which is probably video games. Have dinner. And if we're not talking to each other as a family, we're probably looking at devices. And then you go and have your night routine. And then you want to do the final checks, looking at it, and then you set your alarm, you're ready for the next day. You've probably spent, and this is alarming when people stop and think, 8 hours a day on the phone. And then if you look at the laptop and TV and video games, we're probably 12, 14 hours a day. This is not healthy. It's not good for our brain development. It's not good for our social skills. It's not good for our spiritual life. So we just got to really take a step back and look at the way we spend our time. And I'm the first to put my hand up and say, look, I get consumed, and because of the work I'm doing, I've got to be on the social media platforms. I've got an online store. We've got interacting with people all the time. And I don't know how I could run Parousia without the phone. But I've also got to be in check and say, look, I'm not going to be a slave to this thing. I turn off notifications. A lot of people get frustrated because I don't answer the phone straight away, as many people probably know. But I'll get back to people when I get a chance. And so I have a little rule, like the morning is I have time with God. I try to teach the kids, morning offering, have that time with God. No devices at the dining table at all. And really, look, can I just put it out there? Do you need to have these devices at all? Like at all? When you get to the point where you say, you know what, I could live life without a phone, without an iPad, without video games, take a breath and say, can you imagine your life without it? You know how much freer you're going to be? So I just think minimal. Make sure you're always in control of the device. It's a tool. It's not an end in itself. Don't let that device control you. Then you become a slave to that thing.
It's not almost, it is the new village that's raising the children, right? If you're not taking that active role in it, you're not taking that leadership, I suppose, in monitoring and putting those guardrails, it is the new village that's raising the children. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I want to understand more from your perspective about the importance, because I always feel like we always need to replace a habit with something else, or you can't just say don't do something. There's got to be something to replace it, or some better offering that's better for them, that maybe that need that's fulfilling that need. Maybe the phone is about connection, or I'm feeling lonely, or I'm feeling depressed, or I need excitement, or whatever it is. How important is it for the children, for children to be around the church community. I feel like God's ordained the community, and for us to be around it is something that He intentionally wanted. That's why we go to Mass and we have Mass together. That's why when we get married together. When there's funerals, it's together. It's all about that community. How important is it in ingraining that into your children and almost, being the one that brings them into the church and gets them used to the community within the church?
It's massive. It's massive. If you think about the sacramental life of a Catholic, you have every sacrament is a celebration that's around it. And I love this aspect of what people do, like baptism, confirmation. It's like a wedding day. And then people celebrate. It's awesome, and then there's photos and videos. You go back and you can look at that. It's great. First Holy Communion, first confession. It's a big deal. And celebrate the fact that that's happening. As long as you're with like-minded Catholics that appreciate this. And then you've got all the different other aspects. Just Sunday Mass going in. Unfortunately, many people, again, because we're so busy, they'll go in late to Mass and leave early and don't talk to anyone. That's not what it's set up for. We're coming together as the body of Christ, and we pray in the public worship of the church as the body of Christ. So it is, yes, the personal relationship with Jesus there, but in community with everyone. So we're all united. And so I think a big mistake of ours is just to rock up late, leave early. We should be going early and leaving late. And that way we spend time with each other as well. So obviously inside the church, inside to pray, outside to play. And the idea is we should be doing stuff at the parish more regularly. And what I love about St. Charbel's, look today, I couldn't find a park tonight. Why? Because not only was there a Mass, then it was, look at the aspect, someone losing a loved one, the idea of the Azah, the mercy meal, or the time of visiting the family who lost a loved one. There's 2 or 3 days worth of mourning. Then there's the funeral, and they're not alone. Everyone comes out to support them. That's part of our faith. It is part of our faith. When you look at all those aspects, we need to be there for each other. If we're alone, unless you're called to be a hermit like Saint Charbel, if you are called to do that, that's one thing. But most of us, 99% of us, are social beings, and we are meant to be together. So it's important that we think about the church life for everyone in our family. So parishes need to start thinking that, yes, Mass is Sunday, but what happens between Monday and Saturday? We're in the middle of the week here, and there's stuff happening at St. Charbel's. You could turn up here any night of the week and there's something going on. And if you're a young adult, there's a rosary on every night. The church stays open till late. People are visiting. But what about, say, a young teenager? What about a primary age student? We should be thinking, what do we do for our kids across the board, all the ages? And sort of, you got early primary, upper primary, early high school, late high school, college age, university age. Then you've got singles, then the married. It's sort of like sometimes we forget about that. You get married and then it's over. No. When you get married, it's the beginning. We should support and do things as married couples. I'd love to see date nights more often in church, where we come together and learn about how to be better husbands and wives. Then parenting stuff. We should do stuff there to help each other. Then the grandparents. So you've got a whole spectrum in your life. And the church is the one place, it should be your home away from home. And it really is your real home. As long as we've got that, we can't ask for any more. Because ultimately, when we die, we don't actually leave this family. If we die in friendship with God, the journey continues. Whether you're in heaven or even purgatory, you are part of what's called the mystical body of Christ. You don't leave. We're all in this together. I love that about our faith. I never understood this growing up because I wasn't around Catholics. And I was around non-Catholics. And I didn't know what that felt like. And when I remember rediscovering St. Charbel's as an adult, it was like, home. Because I felt I could see other like-minded Catholics who love their faith. That did everything for me. And people my age. Not just people mum and dad's age, people my age. And that's why that's important. We got to think about this for everyone. And that's the key with parenting too. Don't just throw your little kids with the adults, you know, have things for the different ages and foster that journey with them. And then there's the spiritual levels and then there's the age levels. It's both. It's a bit of a trick, a bit of a balancing act, but we've had each other, the families. I've, you know, we've got families who really take their faith seriously, and we're all neighbors, and they encourage each other. That helps. And say in the suburbs, what can we do? If you can find one or two families in your street or in your on the block that you live that you know of, connect with them, and, you know, visit each other frequently. Make sure, you know, maybe pray a rosary at one person's place and turn it into a social gathering too. So you're praying together, you're coming together as a family, the kids play together as separate to Sunday Mass. It's something where you can allow your friends to talk about the faith, where the kids are hearing, they're playing with the kids. The couple is also encouraged because it flows from the love the husband and wife have, that flows to the children. And if that's not nurtured as well, that's another big issue. That makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, it's amazing. I feel like there's a real big almost like a bit of a revolution amongst the mainly Christian Catholic families who are really, it's almost like turning their back on the world and really uniting with other families. Like, I mean, I live a bit vicariously through my best mate, you know him, Shahidi, and his family, and I see the way that, great man, and I see the way that he raises his children, and you know, the way that he's been able to bring on, you know, and get to know a lot of other like-minded families with their children, and the way that they socialize. It's so much fun, but it's also very faithful as well.
Yes.
It's not necessarily all about, you know, there is prayer and there is joining together in you know, faithful moments, but just being together and having, you know, respectful conversations and, you know, having fun together shows that, you know, because I think oftentimes, you know, there might be a perception from outside, people from outside the church who may think, well, if I'm not living according to the world and I'm living only according to the faith, then we're boring and we're limited. But
furthest thing from the truth.
It's actually right.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, we can still come together and have a lot of really good, wholesome fun together that doesn't involve us needing to go to confession after or compromising our place in heaven.
Right.
So I find that that's
Well
a beautiful thing in this culture. And it reminds me of what St. Paul said, you know, where sin did abound, grace did abound much more. You know, as bad as things are in our culture at times, I think one of the blessings is, particularly with families, is a lot of families have woken up a lot. I know a lot of families, a lot of men and women who maybe weren't as into their faith when they got married, that had children and just completely transformed. I think they saw the world and they started remembering how they were brought up with their parents, going to Mass and living as, you know, a faithful family. And I think they've started to think more about, you know, if I'm not going to be bringing my children up in the village of the church, in the community of the church, then another village is going to be raising them. The phone, the world, the enemy, you know, and we know the results of that. We don't need to go into detail of that because that will probably wind us down a rabbit hole for a couple of hours. But I think that's been a real blessing, and you know, God willing, that continues. But I think another really important thing that I wanted to ask you about, Charbel, and it's not to discount in any way the role of the mother, because I'm sure you look at your wife and the amazing role that she does.
She's a giant, I can't do anything without it.
Yeah. But I feel like because God ordained the husband to be the head of the home, not to put it over his wife, but to lead his family to heaven, how important in the village, I'm talking about in the community, is the role of the husband, father, man?
It's crucial. It's critical that the husband stands up. What is the role of the husband? When you say head of the family, people get the wrong impression of you sit in a throne and everyone serves you. It's actually the head of the family. You are the one responsible to decide what you allow to come into your family, like what influences come and go. Really, if men were men and stood up, and look, I'm talking to myself here. we've got to take the burden off our wives for making these tough decisions. If we leave all the decision making to our wife, in addition to everything else she's doing, it is a huge burden, and we take a backward step. And if you think about, I've got to work, I've got to provide for the family, and that's my job, and that's all I'm going to do. Well, hold on. You're providing for the family, but your other job is to protect the family, not just from enemies like in war times. We're talking about spiritual battle here. So you're also the one to protect your family from all the other demonic influences, the evils out there. So it's up to us to decide as husband and father what direction we go. Yes, of course, it's a team. Husband and wife, the two become one. You're battle partners. So you discuss things together. But ultimately, your wife will trust you knowing that you're going to put the family first, not yourself first. Any husband that puts himself first is actually not living by what God is calling. A leader isn't someone that calls everyone to serve him. The leader is the one that serves. And the way we serve is we are the ones doing the hard yards in yes, the breadwinner in the family. We're trying to bring that. Now, other families, it's not always the case. Sometimes it's important. My wife was the breadwinner in the first couple of years of our marriage. So everyone's situation is different there, but the husband has to be there to sort of make those tough decisions that are in the best interest of the wife and children. And he needs to communicate that to her so she is understanding he's doing it for them. It's not that he's some sort of, dictator and he's telling her what to do. No. That she actually should be expressing herself to the husband. And the husband needs to listen. But ultimately, the husband will then take that information and say, I think we need to do this. But before you even make any decision, who do we turn to? The true Father, God the Father in heaven. And you call upon his guidance. As all the prophets in the Old Testament did, not one of them could speak with authority without first tapping into the authority of God. And so you have to call upon God. You have to pray about it. And then with prayer, discernment, talking to your wife, you then make a decision. So yes, you do make the decisions after those things happen. Pray, listen, talk, converse, and then, you've got the burden of making a decision that has to be in the best interest of the family. And what does that mean? Spiritually. What's the best spiritual interest? What's best for their soul? And that's your job. Take the burden off the wife. It's not fair that we make our wives run the household and parent the kids and make big decisions. So what are you doing, Dad? We need to be hands-on with our wife. But yes, we've got different roles, and you got to talk with your wife about that. So where she needs help, it really is interesting. There are sort of, the prejudices there. That's it. Husband is out all day, wife is home all day, and that's it. It's clear cut. He doesn't lift a finger at home. But what about in a situation where they're both working? Well, you both help. I've got a fun little story. I think it's important here we discuss about how to love your spouse, because the kids see that. And if the kids see a stable relationship between the husband and wife, that's the best way you can impact them. The best way you can be a father is to love your wife. When the kids see that, they know how to be a gentleman. They know how to treat a woman. They know how to respect. If you can lead by example, that's everything. But how do I love my wife? I've got to love her the way she wants to be loved. And it took me 7 years to discover that. First 7 years of my marriage, it was crazy. I was busy going to work. She was working as well, right? I would get home from work tired, putting my feet up, just wanting a break. And she's thinking, hang on, this is like peak hour. We've got to get dinner ready. We've got to bath the kids. What do you think you're doing? And I'm like, come on, give me a break. I just want to rest. Not considering she's been working all day herself. Where's her rest? She had zero rest. And we've got to really understand each other. What are the needs? And, you know, the penny dropped. It was one day I have to share with this, Jade. I just got a coffee. It was a new cafe. This was before moving to Arcadia. I was in George's Hall, and it was a new cafe that was open. And I remember just buying a coffee for my wife and I. It was like after work on the way home. And she was like, I get home, surprised her with this coffee. And she was, oh, I needed that. And we had to drink the coffee. So we sit down on the front porch and the kids are playing inside and we're enjoying this intimate time together. And I'm catching up on the day. How's your day? I'm talking to her. She's talking to me. She's sharing the struggles she's had. I'm sharing the struggles I had. But what's going on? I'm resting. I wanted to put my feet up. I'm resting. She's resting. And she's getting quality time. I'm hearing the challenges she's had. She even mentioned, oh, now I've got to do the bath, the kids. I've got to get the bath ready. Got to do dinner. Oh, got to set the table. And I'm like, you know what? No. I've had my rest now. I'm good. Let me help. And so then I remember setting the table. I remember helping her serve the dinner. I remember packing up. I remember doing the dishes. And that night, would you believe it? My wife is like, she's saying, you are so attractive right now. It's making her fall in love with me again because I'm doing something that she really appreciates. It wasn't about me, it's about her. And what happened to me? I got what I wanted too. Quality time with my wife. I got my rest. But something else I discovered later. There's a thing called love languages. And I didn't realize it till later. And everyone needs to understand this. You have to love your spouse the way they want to be loved, not the way you want to be loved. And the default is your love language. So we see the world through a lens of our own love language. So my love language, I discovered, is physical affection and words of affirmation. They are the complete opposite for my wife. For her, her love language is quality time and acts of service. And that's like for me, acts of service. I just want to be with my wife. I just want to be affectionate with her, and I just want to, I compliment. So what do you think happens? For 7 years, I'm complimenting her, how good she looks, how wonderful she is. I'm hugging her, I'm kissing her, and she's like, not right now. And what's going on? It's doing nothing for her because in her mind, she's saying, there's so much work to be done around the house. I can't even think about being intimate with you. I can't think about compliments right now because I've got stuff to do around the house. I need you to do that first before I can even talk to you. And for 7 years, we're like ships in the night, and this is, I imagine many families are like this. Many couples, we love our spouse through the lens that we understand. So I understand complimenting her. I understand physical touch. For her, that doesn't do anything for her. When the penny dropped, that cup of coffee taught me a lot. I was doing the works, acts of service. Like she was like, wow, and she's giving me hugs and kisses and say, thank you. I needed that. And I'm like, what? The dishes? Okay, I'm going to do more. What do you think I did that night? I swept the floor. Then I discovered how to put the washing machine on and put the scoop of detergent. I didn't know you had to separate colors. But anyway, I just figured out, okay, I can do a bit of this. It's 5 minutes of my day. End of the day, a dishwasher, stack the dishwasher, turn it on. Is that hard? Sweep the floor. Is that hard? And then if that's what's going to give my wife a bit of rest that night because she's worked all day, so be it. And then that's what love is about, loving them the way they want to be loved. And in return, she starts complimenting me, and I love getting the compliments. So she's filling my love, my cup, and then I'm filling her cup. And that's how we stay in love, loving each other through that language. And it flows onto the kids. We have to actually find the love language of the kids. I'll just list them. So I've sort of listed four there. Yeah. But the love languages, there's a guy named Gary Chapman who's written a book on it. It's pretty interesting. You can do your love language test online. It's for free. But I recommend getting to know what it is because it will help you understand your spouse and your children better. So there's acts of service, there's words of affirmation, there's physical touch, there's quality time, and then there's gifts. So for me, gifts don't do much for me. My wife, same thing. So that's But for some people, that's their love language. So it's not even what gift you get them; it's the thought that counts, right? So if you just get whatever roses and chocolates, okay, it's the idea of a gift, and then be spontaneous. So some people, that's their love language. Others, acts of service. Are you doing work around? Are you helping others? And if you understand this, it helps you love your spouse better, and it helps you even communicate with your kids more. So I'm now reading the kids version. So some of my kids, toys, they love gifts. So I got my oldest boy, pretty much figured out now his love language is gifts. So I'm going to be spontaneous and time to time giving gifts. The second one I've discovered, it's probably more quality time. So I spend more quality time. The third one, it's words of affirmation. They want to know that they're doing the right thing. So I have to compliment them more. The fourth one, I've also, quality time. There is also the younger ones, physical touch. So you got to, hug them, squeeze them. So it's knowing what is it that helps fill their cup, and then give them that, and sort of give them more of it. And the more you can do that, the more people feel loved. And then if they are loved, they will be more open to listening to what you have to say. So if this is our job as fathers and husbands, to be there to serve and lead and take the burden off the wife of doing everything. And through that, you will actually have a much healthier marriage and a healthier family. And to be honest, I haven't got it all together. I'm still learning. I've got, teenagers now, and they go through those ages where they're trying to rebel a bit or trying to discover their identity. The idea of community, that, being Maronite, they want to rediscover the Maronite roots. And so as teenagers now, my oldest son can drive. He's driving himself to the Maronite Church, St. George, and then St. Charbel's has been a few times. Our Lady of Lebanon. He'll go to different communities, and he's now trying to plug himself in. And praise God, I want him to do it so it's his own.
Thank God.
So that's all we can do.
The greatest force against evil in the world is the love of man and woman in marriage. Outside of the Holy Eucharist, it has power beyond anything we can ever possibly imagine. That's the words of Cardinal Raymond Burke. I use that sometimes in some of my wedding entries, and I love it. I feel like, every time I hear it again or I just say it, it's just so spectacular that, that the love of a man and woman in marriage is associated in some way with the Holy Eucharist, the true presence of Christ, like in terms of its power. And so when you're talking about that, I feel like for men to hear that, I feel like at times, I feel like for men, obviously, and every family situation is very different, but in some cases where the men might feel like I'm working hard, I'm leaving the running of the home to the woman. But in the village, if that's the way that the community is, where they just see the father, the husband, as just the breadwinner, which is a very important role, but negates the other very important roles like presence in the home, love of the wife, being plugged into the children. Like the fact that you actually read a book about the love languages of your children and are really, immersing yourself in that and trying to practice that is actually such a beautiful thing, because, that's what brings up, well-formed, well-nourished, well-loved children who then go into society and can reflect that as well. And that's why I think when Cardinal Raymond Burke spoke about the love of a man and woman, like you said, you reflect that love to your children. They receive that love, they see that love, and then God willing, they go out into society. They will then try and find a spouse that they can love the same way, because that's what they're used to. Like you said, you're bringing them up from a young age where they're praying the Angelus, they're doing all this. They're seeing mum and dad loving each other, praying together, dealing with struggle together, not separate, and they will then emulate that, God willing, and love others, not just their spouse, but others in the same way that they've seen you and your wife love one another. So I think it's really beautiful. And I pray for men. I feel like at times, and I'm not saying that we're harder done by than women, but I feel like at times for men it is a little bit maybe more challenging. I say it to men a lot. We can't go home sometimes after a hard day and cry in front of our wife if we're struggling. It's actually a big difficulty. You know, it's not something, I know the society want men to be more emotional and things like that, but I still feel like it's, for a lot of men, they feel like my job is to be the leader, and being a leader means I need to be strong. I need to be winning the bread for the family. I need to be leading with strength in that particular way. I'm not suggesting that it's time to go and cry and do all of that kind of stuff, but there is also an opportunity for the father with his wife and his children to be loving and nurturing and plugged in, as well as being the main breadwinner. I remember hearing Danny Abdullah.
Yes.
He's a beautiful storyteller about
Right,
this
role
kind of
model,
stuff.
yeah.
Oh, amazing. And I remember hearing a talk that he said where he spoke about even before his children passed away, the 3 children passed away, that the most important, or that his work day started the moment that he got home. And I remember he gave an example once. He said, I remember coming home, this is as well before his children passed away, that his kids just wanted to play with him in their toy room. And so he would go in after work, he'd be so tired, and he'd be sitting there and he'd be like just not wanting to be there, but just playing with them. And then he kept doing that every day. And he said that after 3 months, he actually started looking forward to coming home, sitting and playing with his kids. That's all they wanted. And he loved that, and he spoke about it with so much joy and love in his heart. And I took a lot out of that, actually. I haven't got kids myself, but I said that one day, God willing, I hope that I can be like that as well, you know.
You know, it's beautiful, beautiful example, because it's so easy to be caught up with our own lives, and especially work. It can be stressful. And I know I've had so many days where I come home and you know, I might still even be on the phone as I'm arriving home and finishing off a phone call. And we need to have you almost got to switch off and then be present. And being present with the family is going to be, that's a game changer if we can stop at least during that crucial time for our kids, both before and after work, to be present for them. And it's just quality time, just that time with them. And it doesn't even matter what you're doing. Playing, wasting time with them, as we say. You know, the idea is being there with them, attentive, and not thinking about work. I highly recommend putting the phone somewhere, making a statement. This is going in a drawer somewhere. I'm on my family time, you know, between the hours of whatever, 5, 6 till 8, no one interrupts me. You know, I'm with my kids. And if you make that sort of precious, I think that goes a long way. The kids value that. When work and our own little stresses in the day get in the way in the family life, I think it's telling our kids, you know, other things are more important than them, when ultimately everything that happens at work is, what's the purpose of it? It's so we can help them. So work is not life in itself. It's a means to an end. And what's the end? To bring the kids up in a way that they love God. So we've really just get our priorities right. And I'm speaking to myself too. Look, it's very tough. The devil knows how to get in, even in my situation where I'm trying to I'm evangelizing in churches, and I can get caught up with the faith. And my wife has to remind me, hey, you're talking about, you go into churches a lot, you travel a lot. Don't forget your family. And she's 100% right. I got to be careful not to be caught up with everyone else's agenda and then forget my duty at home. So I've got to make sure that I've got to find that balance too, even doing God's work. And that can be a real challenge. So now that the kids are older, I try to bring them with me to things. So I try to have that one-on-one time as well. Wherever I go, I do Bible studies, I give talks, I go to pilgrimages. I want to bring a family member with me. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not perfect. I'm still struggling through this and trying to find the balance. But yeah, being more attentive at home and being more attentive to my wife's needs as well as my children's needs. But yeah, I love that story about Danny. It's so true.
I feel like it needs to be a little bit of a culture shift. That's where I think the village plays such a big role. And that's why I asked about the role of the husband, the father, the man in the community,
Mm-hmm.
because I think we need to create safe environments for other men where we can say, no, the presence in your family is more important than just being the breadwinner, because with being the breadwinner comes the status in society, the success, the notoriety. But if you're doing those things really well, but your children are being neglected, or your family, and I'm sure it's unintentional a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
because there is that feeling that I'm working hard, my wife looks after the family, I work hard to win the bread for the family for a great intention. I want my kids to have a life that I didn't have. But like you said, it's like the analogy of, you buy them the present, they're more wrapped in the box than they are with the actual toy. And it's like, I'm sure the kids are grateful for the life that they have, but they will probably trade it a million times over to have their father present with them all the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where the big gap in society is: the father, the father wound, the absent father, the non-existent father at times, the broken family. It causes a lot of issues in the village, in the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, God willing, we can, as men, really be an advocate for that, to really encourage other men to say, make sure that you're making that time for your children to be genuinely present, genuinely part of their life. I think it's beautiful that you touch on it as well. I love that you spoke about the love language thing as well. I think that's a really beautiful thing, to try and understand your children a little bit more.
It helped me first with my spouse. I think if every couple looked at that, your relationship, if that strengthens, that's going to be a much easier thing. It flows to the children, and then you start to look at the children. But I mean, what you're saying, the village, we need each other. The men need to have friends. Iron sharpens iron, as they say. So we need to create times where we're connecting with our friends. Do you have any good male friends that you can share advice with? I'm starting, and it can be a bit vulnerable, like a bit embarrassing. You want to sort of say, I don't want to really open up about some of the weaknesses I have. But you know what? Swallow the pride, and sometimes that could be the best thing you do. It actually encourages your friend too. So your friend, if it's a good friend, they want to do what's best for you as well, and they want to give advice that is going to help. And so if you've got a good friend, lean on them, and then hopefully you're also that good friend that you're looking for. Be the friend you're looking for. So then when they need someone, you're there for them. And then it becomes, we need to foster good friendships too, and men having space then to spend time with each other. So that is important too. And it's great to see more men's groups starting, but it needs to be natural. So it's good that the church is doing its bit, but I think individuals just need to do their own bit. Like, find a good friend.
I agree.
And make sure that you're able to lean on that person. You got each other's back. That's where this village concept can work, because when we're down, we need each other. They can help. More people can help this person, because there's going to be a day when they're down, and then we can help them. So we have to be there. And when you do that, I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I think that the faithful men groups, not just in the church, I agree with you about the ones that are a bit more organic, the ones that just happen amongst men that are just mates. And it doesn't need, like, this is the thing, you'll know it with your mates, like I know it with my mates. The conversations that we have aren't like, so tell me about how you feel today, or what's troubling you, I'm here for you in that particular way. But it's just, I think for us men, it's just the presence and having those faithful men. I know with my great mates that are like my brothers, we don't always talk about the faith, but there is that underpinning of where we all met was around church. And nothing that we do, like I don't think I've ever gone to confession after I had to hang around with my mates, which is a blessing. I joke about it. I say, they're great friends without the confession. And that's phenomenal. And I feel like when we need to be there for each other, we can be there. And it doesn't need to be, overly emotional. It's just somebody sharing with another person and the other person giving them advice and vice versa. And it's just a safe environment. I feel like that's where, as men, we've done a disservice to each other at times, that we can't, in certain environments, we can't hang around with each other without committing some kind of sin or having to do something that really compromises our faith. And I feel like that's where, as men, particularly in the community, we really need to try and work harder to be better mates with each other, but in a faithful way. I feel like that's really, really important. Going back to that example of the paralytic, lifting up our mates to Christ rather than to the enemy.
Yeah, amen. You're spot on. We got to be there in the socialize together, and have good times together, as well as that you're not always just interacting when you're down. We should be having
exactly.
positive, good time together. Go sport, footy, sit down. There's movements now. Cigar lounges are opening up again these days.
Yeah.
And I started to think, like, because we had Matt Fradd out recently, and it was like he's into it big time, and I'm like, what is it about it? It's really not about the cigar itself. It's about the idea of sitting down.
Yeah.
You're having a drink. Yeah. And you're actually not in front of a screen. You're not anywhere else. You're present, just chatting about stuff, and it's relaxing. So create these spaces where we can do these things, and you're not sinning. You're doing something that is, mutually uplifting,
and it's fun as well. Like this meant I've always, in my faith journey, always been cognizant of the fact that if an outsider saw the way that I live my life, I want them to see, the glory of the Lord is man fully alive.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to be seen fully alive, enjoying my life, having fun, enjoying myself, but not doing it in a way where I'm leading myself and others to sin.
That's right.
Because fun doesn't necessarily include, or doesn't necessarily mean doing whatever you want at any expense. It means being at peace and just being able to enjoy yourself. And there are beautiful ways to do that as men, which is a great example that you brought up about the cigar things. I know some really manly men that are really close to their faith that love that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They love cars. They love a drink, in moderation. They love a bit of a cigar. They love to hang around with the boys. I've got several really good men's groups that I'm part of, as in when I say men's groups, they're kind of, they're not like, specific men's faith groups. They're just an organic group of men.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in the faith. We have dinners once a month, and we have good discussions. We have a laugh with each other. We have a banter. We pay each other out. But then there are topics where we bring up things in relation to the faith. And it's great that we're all on the same page about it. And if somebody wants to learn something, they can ask a question and say, I don't know, or I don't really agree with this. Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah.
And know that they're in an environment where they're going to get a proper answer, and not somebody telling them, oh, don't worry about that. You can just live your life the way you want. That church teaching is, obsolete. So
it's funny. We claim on one hand, on one breath, we say, I want the church to get out of my life. I want to do whatever I want. But I remember before I took my faith seriously, I remember I was bored all the time, and I was doing stuff. I was doing a lot more, things. But when you start to break it down, you look at what activities you're getting up to, it really is very much boring. Like I know why I was bored, because I was doing things without any purpose. It was just for the sake of it. But once you discover your faith and you be fully alive, appreciate everything. That means everything. That means, be adventurous a little bit. So I've visited more countries in my life because of my faith than ever. So I've been to 30 countries. I love the cultures. I've experienced so many different things, the different foods, the different customs, the different, pilgrimage sites and different places where, going, enjoying God's creation, the nature, helping people in different aspects, different statuses. Oh my goodness. I've seen more. I've never been bored ever since discovering God, and ever since putting God first. Like, I've literally never been bored. Even if I'm stuck in traffic, that's an opportunity to turn the time in traffic, not just to be there, oh, what am I going to do now? I'm thinking about my prayers. I might pray. Now we've got podcasts, we've got audio books, we've got so many different ways of interacting and learning and filling our mind. I can make phone calls to people, maybe call someone in need. There's really not enough hours in the day, and life is an adventure. I love it. I was stuck on the road just yesterday. I had So I had a 2-week tour of Matfred. The next day, we went for a 1-week holiday as a family down south. And it was beautiful. Spent time with the family. And, touching on the topic today, like my 6-year-old daughter said, I love Dad on holidays. He's all, can we have holidays all the time? So it's like, okay, I better be more attentive here. But it was great. We're playing Connect 4, playing board games, playing pool, going to the beach, prawning, catching what they call nippers, in the beach, fishing. We're just doing stuff all day, every day, throughout the day. Then we drive home back to Sydney, and it was a long drive because there was a massive congestion. But it actually was funny, and thank God this person was okay. But there was a big fire on Princess Highway yesterday, and it held up traffic for like 3 hours.
Wow!
And people complaining they want to get to, and it turned into a bit of a fun little social. The car was stopped. We're getting out. The kids are now, we're near like farm animals. We were seeing cows, and the kids were playing games, and we're just filling in the time together. We weren't bored. And I think it's important that every opportunity in life is an opportunity that we glorify God through our thoughts, words, actions, but how we interact with each other too. And like I say, you're never going to be bored when you prioritize God first. So the best way you can be a good father and husband, love God first. Yes, before your wife, and yes, before your children. If you want to love your children better, love God more. You want to love your spouse more, love God more. But then when you do that, everything else flows. So you want to love your children more, love your spouse more. So love God, love your spouse, because that's your vocation. You are called to love them. The fruit of that love is your children. So then if you want to love your children more, love your spouse more. You want to love your spouse more, love God more. So God is 1, your spouse is 2, your children are 3. You want to love your friends more, love your children more. So then you see what's going on. God is 1, your spouse is 2, children are 3, your friends are 4. And guess who's 5? You. What does the world tell you? It's the complete opposite. Put yourself first. The most important person in the world is you. That's selfishness, that's pride. Imagine everyone lived that way, by the way.
Well, a lot
Like
do. And
no one would follow any of the rules.
Well, I think
It'd be
a lot
anarchy.
do, Charbel. Like it's funny you
It's
say
heading
that.
that way.
Like we flipped the script, right?
Yeah.
And I think we're probably one of the most miserable generations ever.
Yeah. We're
We're
spoiled.
the most depressed, anxious, sad.
Yeah.
You know.
Depression's higher than ever.
Yeah.
Suicide rates are higher than ever. Why on earth is this happening? If you look at it, it's literally the opposite. The devil basically inverts everything that's good. He'll take a good and flip it. So you are first, according to the world. Your friends are second because you can choose your friends. You can't choose your family. So your friends go above your family in the secular world. Then your children would be there, because unfortunately 1 in 2 marriages are ending in divorce. The kids become, and here's a big trap. We put the kids above the spouse. That's a big trap. You might think you're doing the right thing, but you actually are not. Your spouse is ahead, but we flip it. The children go ahead of the spouse, then the spouse, and then if you have a faith, God. So it's the exact mirror opposite of what we should be doing. We've got to put God first, then your spouse, then your children, then your friends, and then yourself last. And you're going to live a free life. It's the best advice I can give.
This has been a very, very informative and insightful discussion, Charbel. Really, really glad that you joined us, and really thankful that you made the time to be here, given how many other busy commitments that you have. So thank you once again for your insights. God bless you and your family. And we look forward to being with you on our next episode very shortly. Thank you.